I haven't told my doctor about one thing, and it might affect my chances of getting skin removed. The story of Tammy Slaton is one of the most interesting and sad reality TV stories ever told. As soon as she emerged on 1,000-Pound Sisters, viewers had mixed feelings about her. Some wanted her to stay alive, while others didn't trust her decisions. But as the years went by, her life turned into a roller coaster of near-death experiences, huge weight losses, broken relationships, and terrible family deaths. What was supposed to be a show about change turned into a raw look at pain, loss, and strength that made millions of people cry. Today, we'll go over Tammy Slaton's sad story again, but this time not as a headline, but as the story of a woman who fought against all chances. The moment of feeling. Tammy's story was told by everyone. People saw more than just another reality TV contestant the first time they saw Tammy Slaton on TV. They saw a woman whose every breath looked like it was like she was fighting to stay alive. People were quickly drawn to Tammy because of how she looked. Weak but determined. Fragile but determined to be seen. When she was on screen, you couldn't help but feel something. For some watchers, it was a mix of caring about her and wanting her to do well. For some, it was anger at her for not wanting to change. The journey of her reality TV show was framed by this mix of respect and frustration. The most memorable part of the show was when Tammy was taken to the hospital and put into a medically induced sleep at the end of the third season. People who were fans were shocked by the news. There were a lot of sad, scary, and harsh comments on social media overnight. Some people were already in sorrow because they were sure the end was near. Others kept criticizing her, saying that what happened was inevitable, because of the choices she made. Anyone could agree on one thing, though. Tammy was no longer just one woman's private battle. She was now a public symbol of a bigger talk about being overweight, drug abuse, being responsible, and having empathy. But that moment was only a flash in her much longer life. Tammy's problems didn't start all of a sudden with a TV show. From a youth where health, weight, and trauma quietly intertwined to set the stage for the fights that followed, they had been building for decades. To understand the sadness that fans would later feel, you have to go back to Tammy's childhood, when her story was still being written behind the scenes. Heavy Roots is about a youth marked by pain and weight. A lot of people think of girlhood stories when they think of Tammy's childhood. Her weight was always there, even when she was young. Tammy was already carrying a load that was much heavier than her age could explain. Other kids her age played easily on playgrounds or had carefree school days. Because she was big, she was picked on, left alone, and felt more and more ashamed by the time she was a teenager. What began as weight. Things quickly got worse and became life-threatening. As an adult, she weighed more than 600 pounds, and some sources say she weighed more than 700 pounds at her heaviest point. These numbers were more than just facts. They told her what her daily life was like. It became impossible to walk without help, and simple things like taking a bath or getting into bed became huge problems. My friend Tammy's health got so bad that she needed air to breathe properly. Every move she made in her life was limited by her body, but what they looked like didn't tell the whole story. There were greater problems going on behind the weight that were often not seen. Early on, depression set in, followed by times of despair and thoughts of suicide. The outside world saw a body that was way too fat for safety. Tammy's mind was often filled with hopelessness that made it hard to breathe. It was hard for her to get the tools she needed and get the care she needed. Instead of getting help right away, she was ignored, and her health and weight problems got worse until they were very dangerous. This is the life Tammy lived as an adult. By the time the cameras started rolling, she wasn't just a woman who was trying to lose weight. After years of struggle, trauma, and mental health problems, she made it through. In a surprising turn of events, reality TV gave her both attention and a chance to make things better, even though she couldn't yet imagine what would happen. Sisters, get ready. What reality TV did to make it possible. TLC's 1,000-Pound Sisters came out in January 2020 with a simple idea. Two sisters who both want to get their lives back by losing weight. Amy and Tammy were presented as siblings who couldn't live without each other. They were linked not only by blood, but also by their struggles with being overweight. Hope, account, ability, and change were offered by the show. At first, the idea made sense. People watched as two women helped each other, laughed through awkward doctor visits, cried through setbacks, and talked freely about problems that most people deal with behind closed doors. It was messy and raw, but it felt real. When Tammy was around, she stood out because she didn't hide her feelings, whether they were anger, sensitivity, or biting humor. People couldn't stop talking about her, for better or worse. The cameras were both good and bad for Tammy. On the one hand, being on the show gave her access to doctors, diet plans, and other helpful things that she wouldn't have had otherwise. It gave her people to cheer her on, and that support was important. The examination, on the other hand, was harsh. Millions of people saw every time she made a mistake. Every fight I had with Amy turned into a topic for an online battle. Being judged in public added extra stress that made her feel even worse about herself. And even though the sisters at first seemed like a team, there were soon holes in their relationship. In the end, reality TV doesn't just show life. It makes it bigger. Even though Amy and Tammy were going in different ways, the bond that had held them together before started to weaken. The difference between Amy's big steps and Tammy's being alone. One of the most interesting things about the show was how different the sisters' paths were. In order to change her life, Amy had bariatric surgery and started to lose weight. The doors that opened for her were ones that Tammy could only watch from the bleachers. Amy soon enjoyed becoming a mom by welcoming her son Gage into the world. She then got ready for the birth of her second child. People watched her major events happen like pages in a book of change as she bought a new house, started a family, and made her life bloom in every way. Tammy's story, on the other hand, went the other way. She didn't want to follow diet plans or work out, and she fought back when family or helpers tried to help. Amy, who used to be her best friend, became more angry with her because she wouldn't accept help. The arrival of Tysa, a health aide, made things even worse. Instead of inspiring Tammy, it made her angry. She felt trapped, smothered, and less open to change than ever before. When the sisters' goals changed, the bond between them that used to be unbreakable began to appear. Amy's attention turned to becoming a mother and making her home more solid, while Tammy got deeper into her destructive habits. Fans said it broke their hearts to see. One sister and the other had started their trip together, but were now living in very different places. Not only was this increasing gap emotional, it was also a sign of something bigger. It showed how one person's growth can sometimes make another person's problems seem worse, making failure feel even worse. And while Tammy was having a hard time dealing with her sister's success and her own lack of progress, she turned to risky ways of coping that led her to the worst time of her life, into the dark. Tammy is upset. Tammy's bad luck didn't start all at once. Years of denial, unaddressed pain, and being alone made it so heavy for her that she could not bear it any longer. By the end of 2021, her health had gotten so bad that her body finally gave out. She had such a bad medical emergency that doctors had to put her into a coma, and they didn't know if she would ever wake up. As people who had been following her for years saw the line between reality TV and real life blur, this was the moment. The drama was caught on camera, but the fear was real and unvarnished. Her family had been pleading with her for years to pay attention to her health, and now they were scared that they might lose her forever. For Tammy, the sleep was both a physical and a mental wake-up call. At that point, years of bad habits, stubbornness, and rejection all came together to form an unavoidable truth. It was too much for her body to handle. When Tammy finally opened her eyes, she wasn't just the stubborn sister who didn't care about problems. She was someone who had been close to death and lived. She was shocked, but not into action right away. Instead, she realized that her life was no longer her own. It was important to them that she lived or died. Even the people who don't like her on social media, all of them were now parts of her story. The sleep finally broke her, making her do something. She could no longer ignore what her body was telling her. The next few weeks were not fun, easy, or quick. They were the beginning of Tammy's hardest chapter yet, a journey of rehabilitation that would last for months and test her in ways she had never been tried before. The long lift, physical therapy, surgery, and a huge change. Before getting better, people went to rehab, which sounds like an easy word until you're in it. Tammy was in a rehabilitation center for more than 14 months. Every day was ruled by the structure, routine, and rules she had fought against before. Late-night binges were replaced by controlled meals. Instead of being alone, they had hours of guided treatment. Small, unnoticeable wins, like taking a few more steps, needing less oxygen, and slowly learning how to fix a body that had been broken for decades, were signs of progress. For the first time, Tammy started to show dedication. She had an awakening after being so close to dying. She wasn't free of her problems all of a sudden, but she was ready to fight like she never had before. At first, doctors said she might never be able to have surgery because of her size and health risks. But things started to change. But in the middle of 2022, bariatric surgery made a difference that had once seemed impossible. The process did come with some risks. Surgeons knew that Tammy's body had risks that most patients didn't. But it worked out in spite of everything. After the surgery and more rehab, she changed so dramatically that even her harshest peers were shocked. Tammy's weight had gone down from over 700 pounds to about 185 pounds by the middle of 2025. To give you an idea, she had lost the weight of several adult people. It was amazing how things changed. Still, her problems didn't end when she lost the weight. In many ways, it was the start of a new set of problems that fans would not be able to see, but were just as painful. She had to learn to live with the scars that losing weight had left on her body and on the inside. Changed body and secret costs of change. A lot of weight loss often comes with an unnoticed price. When it was over, Tammy saw a body she barely recognized. Even though the weight had gone away, heavy folds of loose skin still hung from her arms, chin, and chest. The scale showed how well things were going, but the mirror showed a different kind of battle. In order to move forward, she had several surgeries to get rid of extra skin. One of the surgeries took more than 15 pounds off her body all at once. Recovery was hard. The wounds needed constant care. It was still hard to move around, and seeing such a greatly changed body was very hard on the emotions.